For this screencast, we're going to cover one of the more complex commands in Drush Recipes, which is Drush Ddt, which we bring it up here. You'll see it's for doing a target differential. So it's for Drush diff targets. And so the idea of this is that you can analyze two sites as far as what it took to build them, and then come up with a recipe that can get you from one to the other. You'll see it has some things that may start to sound a little like features. As far as the components, you can select modules, variables, features, which currently doesn't do anything, and permissions as far as what you want to export. So I have two sites that are just kind of very vanilla sites that we can do some target differentials against. So we can do Drush, and then we'll at DD1. I have an at DD1 and an at DD2. So see what this command looks like. We'll do at DDT and then at DD2. We can do components, and we'll do, we just care about modules for the time being. And then we can also do the test run command that is kind of pervasive throughout Drush Recipes. So we can see what this looks like. What it's going to do is, there we go. We saw these sites are actually pretty similar. So it went and connected to the first site and said, what would it take to make the first site become the second site? And you'll see the only things that it's calculated are disabling paranoia and sekkit. So there haven't really been anything done to these. We can look at this in reverse just to verify they should just switch. So if we do DD1, and then we'll do components equals modules, test run again, so it prints the screen. Otherwise it'll generate a recipe, which we don't care about. And so now we're analyzing the same thing in reverse, right? So we're saying what would be required to make site 2 be like site 1. And so you can see we would have to enable paranoia and sekkit on DD2 in order to do it. Another fun thing you can do is there's the make it so command. So instead of test run, we'll do make it so, which is going to, yeah, there we go. It'll prompt, hey, you're about to apply the difference between 2 and 1. This means that 2 will have the above recipe applied to it, effectively making it the same site as 1. So it's going to figure out the difference, which it just did, and then it's going to run this recipe against it. You can see how this might be useful when you're doing some migrations and things, dev down to production, things like that. And so now when we do our DDT, we'll do a test run, should get a very different message. There we go. So the sites are exactly the same. Most likely something is wrong unless you were testing that they are the same. So if we take the component modules out of the mix, we should get a very different result. So let's see, what would it take to get from 2 to 1 for everything that it knows how to do a comparison against. So this is a lot more than just modules which live in the system table. And so the first thing you'll see, it says, hey, it's not required to install Profiler Builder, but it's highly recommended. So I'm going to do that because what Profiler Builder does is it allows you to, we'll just run the same command again. It effectively removes a lot of variables from the variables table that can have security implications. Things like your cron key, things like your private key of your site, and as well as some just random cache values that don't mean anything. So you'll see here that we've got a recipe now, and there's, again, these are fairly simple sites. So because it had to enable Profiler Builder, it now says, hey, Profiler Builder is something that would need to be disabled to become the other site. You'll see there's been very minor changes made to some system variables as well. So user register is 0 is the difference between it. Error level 0, email verification. These are some things that have a different setting on the other site. And so if we play it in reverse, you'll see we get the same message as before. About turning on Profiler Builder, because it uses whatever the first target is as its base for making the evaluation. And so yeah, we'll just enable Profiler Builder on that site. Now we'll run it again. You see those values should be different but they'll be the reverse, right? Because we've calculated that they were different before. So you'll see, hey, user register needs to be 2. And then we see here, these values actually don't exist in the target. So we would need to delete these variables in order to achieve the same system. So especially with much more complex sites, this can be extremely beneficial. Or if you're inheriting a site from someone and say it's a distribution of some kind, I can say something like, well, what would it take to make target 1 the same as, and in this case, I know that the Drush Recipes web service lives on here. And so what would it take to make target 1 the same as the Drush Recipes web service? And so we can do make it so, which is not going to do it immediately, so I can confirm it. But you'll see that it will generate the recipe required to go from this test site. It'll confirm. Are you sure you want to apply the difference between DD1 and DR? This means that DD1 will have the above recipe applied to it, effectively making it the same as DR. You'll see this is a rather sophisticated. There's a lot going on here with this one. It's doling out permissions, enabling modules. It's doing a lot. And the awesome thing is, because the other thing is a full-blown Drupal site, we can just tell it, yeah, go ahead and run. And you saw some of the permissions things will come up invalid. It's because, unfortunately, you have to kind of make the assumption that the user roles are the same on each site. And so you can get into some issues as far as automating the deployment of that at the moment. But you see it's going to step through every part of that recipe it was about to generate to attempt to give me the same site on either side. So we're going through all these permissions, which apparently are not there. And then once we get out of the permissions, we'll get into some of the modules and the backend variables in the variables table that are there. But all right, so I paused there for a second to get through all those permissions, which didn't exist between systems. So now it's enabling all these modules, and now you see it's going to go through and start to systematically set all the variables. So while there is obviously more to a site than the modules enabled, or features enabled, what the variables are and what the permissions and roles are, this can get you a lot of the way to, at the very least, analyzing what has become different between two sites. So that's the DDT command. There's a lot more you can do with it. You can also do it against null target, in which it will tell you how to go from nothing to the site in question, which could be a really good lightweight way of doing a distribution if you're an organization.